Hi, I'm Natalie Brunell, and thanks so much for checking out the Coin Stories podcast video page. I am talking to the legends in Bitcoin about their backstories, career paths, and why they believe in BTC. This podcast does not provide financial advice. This episode is brought to you by the Bitcoin Conference 2022. It's going to be held in Miami next year, April 6th through 9th, and it is going to be a 4-day amazing festival with 2 general admission days, an industry day, and Soundfest. Tens of thousands of people will make their way to Miami, and I wanted to share some photos from the 2021 conference because that event is one of the reasons Coin Stories took off, and I was able to secure such amazing interviews with legends like Michael Saylor. Now, you want to get your ticket pretty soon because hotels are booking up fast. I know I recently just booked, so head to b.tc/conference to get your pass and use Coin Stories as the code for 10% off. This episode is also brought to you by OKcoin, one of my favorite new places to buy Bitcoin. OKcoin is the fastest growing exchange serving over 190 countries globally with the easiest onboarding and lowest fees around. They're on a mission to make learning about and buying Bitcoin easier than ever, and they're all about bringing more financial literacy to everyone, which is something I really care about as well. From being the only exchange to integrate Lightning to contributing over $1 million to Bitcoin core devs, they are doing incredible work to further the Bitcoin ecosystem. You can head to go.okcoin.com/Natalie for $50 in Bitcoin when you sign up. Super proud to share my guest today is from OKcoin CEO Hong Fang. So grateful to have spent time with her in Miami at Art Basel, where we actually recorded this interview, and she is a huge supporter of women getting into the industry and also sponsoring content creators like myself. So I'm super, super grateful. Hong is the CEO of OKcoin, and she's the first woman in the world to lead a crypto exchange. Before joining OKcoin, she served as head of investment and strategy at Giant Network, which is a Chinese developer and operator of MMO games. And before that, Hong spent 8 years at Goldman Sachs, where she focused on M&A, capital markets, investment, and restructuring. She has a fascinating backstory coming from China. So without further delay, here's Hong. Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining for this episode. We are getting the special treatment from my sponsor, OKcoin. We are here with the CEO, Hong Fang. We are in Miami at Art Basel. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I want to start at the very beginning. You have a very fascinating backstory. So let's start from the beginning. You're from China. Where are you from in China, and what was your childhood like there?
My hometown is in the small mountainous area. It's close to Shanghai and Hangzhou. It's very beautiful. I really miss it. But I grew up there, and the whole, I would say, time when I was growing up, it was also the period when the free market was introduced into China. So I basically saw the transformation of people's life throughout the whole process, and it was quite empowering.
Wow. So what did your parents do, and do you have siblings?
I don't. I'm a starting generation of single child policy.
Wow.
So I wish I have siblings, but no, I don't have siblings.
Oh my
I have
gosh.
cousins.
And was your dream always to come to the US, or what did you grow up thinking you wanted to do?
I definitely did not dream about coming to US. I didn't even have idea of what US was like before. Like many other kids, I was thinking of becoming an astronaut, scientist, but never thought of myself being in tech or finance.
So one of my best friends is also from China, and we have a lot in common because I feel like Eastern European immigrants and Chinese immigrants, the families have a lot in common. They're both very hard on their kids. Education is number one. They want the kids to be doctors or lawyers and pretty much nothing else. Did you experience that as well?
Actually, no. My parents didn't ask too much from me. My dad worked in central bank actually, and my mom was an accountant, self-trained accountant. They just want me to be a good person. They didn't ask too much about what you should be doing in the future whatsoever. They didn't set that expectation for me. But yeah, I guess I was lucky to some extent.
So central bank though, I mean, did you grow up having an understanding of money, or what were the class systems like in China? Were you part of like the middle class, upper class?
I think well, it was part of the government. I definitely did not grow up with a sense of the monetary system. It was, but I did see bags of cash when I was little. Because we lived close to where my dad worked. So I'd see piles of cash, piles of cash when I was little. But I didn't really get a sense of really how the financial system works until I got to Chicago for business school. And that's where I started kind of learn about finance, about economics and things like that.
What was that process like, just applying to go to school in the U.S.? Because it seems like there are a lot of international students, especially from China, coming here to the U.S. to study.
Yeah. It was just like every other candidates going through the process, applying for business school. You write essays, basically stories of why you want to be there, and then there are certain standard tests you have to take, and that's pretty much it.
Were you a really good student?
I don't know. Maybe.
Do you remember what you wrote in your essay of why you wanted to come to Chicago?
I know. I had no idea what I did.
Okay.
But I knew why I wanted to go to Chicago in the first place, because I did have some optionalities back then. But I was really intrigued by. I was always a big believer in giving people more power to make their own decisions, particularly growing in a context where you see when that decision-making process was given back to people, there is so much more possibilities coming out of the people. And if you actually look at history of China, there was also a lot of back and forth, even in Chinese history, of when the government actually took more central planning kind of stance versus letting people make their own decision. And there are very big implications on the economy. So I did experience that. So I was always wanting to see more of that and getting deeper into it. And I think economy is really what's driving a lot of things, and economic policymaking is a lot of the invisible hands behind what we're seeing. So when I was looking at the business schools, Chicago did stand out because of its reputation in economics and things like that.
So when you came here, was there an experience where sort of in your mind there's this juxtaposition of the system that you grew up in and that your parents grew up in versus the one you're now learning that's sort of considered the superpower, if you will, in the world as far as the global reserve currency and the American value system?
Maybe. I think obviously there are cultural differences, but I would say actually a lot of the fundamental values are shared regardless of which culture you came from. So I think on that front, I don't feel too much conflict, but it's always a process of exploration, like many other immigrants in US, right? On the one part, you are trying to identify with what you get it yourself into, and on the other hand, you're kind of missing what you're leaving behind. Mm-hmm. At some point, you find a balance, and then when you go back to where you came from, there is another cultural shock coming at you. So I think there is a natural process there. But I'm glad that I made that decision.
So when you were in Chicago at the business school, is that when you decided you wanted to go work in banking and on Wall Street? And how did you get your first job?
Business school is an interesting process. You actually started looking for a job even before you started your first year in business school. I remember before going to Chicago, I actually got an email from the school office saying, you know what, you gotta prepare your resume and thinking about, interview and start preparing for
already.
Yeah. And I think the first week we were there was already a lot of conversations and career events happening on campus, and that took a lot of adjustments. It's the cultural shock. Where in China, if you want to socialize with somebody else, you sit down, go to a restaurant, sit around a round dining table and eat and discuss. Right? In here, you socialize by standing, holding something in your hand and walk around. That was the first adjustment that I had to make. But it was a lot of work, but it was fun. It was interesting exploring, and I did I didn't plan for going investment banking before coming to business school because I had no idea. I had no idea what it is. I have never heard about it before.
Oh, okay.
Before, yeah, but then because in Chicago you have a lot of first tier employees coming to campus, and investment banks were the first batch together with consulting firms.
Oh, wow.
So,
And Goldman came?
Yeah.
Did they recruit you?
I didn't end up at Goldman actually for my summer internship. I went to Morgan Stanley in Hong Kong because I was not sure whether I wanted to stay in US or go back to Asia after business school. So I figured I'll use the internship to at least try out Hong Kong, see if I like it, see if I like the career path.
Yeah.
And it would be it would be an easier decision for me for full time. I can always choose. If I go to stay in US for internship, I would not be able to make that comparison. So,
just out of curiosity, before we go into more of your career, what are the differences, or maybe back then it's even different than now, but between how our Fed policy works, our monetary system works in the US versus the one that your dad essentially worked in, the central banks and the federal policy in China?
I don't think there was much fundamental difference looking back at it. It was all about somehow planning for the economy and connect some dots between monetary policy, fiscal policy, and the economic activity that you as a central bank want to see, and make policy decisions accordingly. So, and inevitably, a key element of that policy making decision is inflation, right? And it was always a assumption, even in classroom when you learn as a student macroeconomics, there was always this unsaid assumption. It's not even taught as an assumption; it's taught as a fact.
Yeah,
that you got to be able to have some inflation rate to help the economy grow, to stimulate.
Yes.
To stimulate people to consume more and then to grow. So that was
that Keynesian mentality, right?
Yes, that is always there. So I don't there may be variations here and there, but ultimately it's very similar.
Got it.
So I think that is something that is interesting, and I didn't realize that until I went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, and it suddenly occurred to me that this is all actually planned and centrally planned, and that was actually the biggest driver of everything behind all these free markets.
That's
so
fascinating.
Prices being manipulated, it's being planned when you actually cannot really plan things, right? How are you going to make all these decisions when there are so many different elements in the market, and you have to actually decide what goes into GDP, what goes into all these metrics to define inflation and unemployment rate and all these stuff. Like, it's just impossible.
Right.
But somehow there are hypothetical theories and frameworks to make it work. But it's a big experiment, social experiment that we are living in.
Well, and you, I think, learned and you saw firsthand what that experiment looks like with Wall Street, which benefits from a lot of the printing, right? So tell me, how did you get your job at Goldman, and what was your experience like there? How did that shape your career?
Yeah. Again, I got it basically after internship with Morgan Stanley. I had a return offer, but I decided that I didn't want to stay in Hong Kong. I want to stay in US, so I basically continued interviewing for full-time, and Goldman gave me a full-time offer. So I ended up in Goldman. I intentionally went to financial institutions group. Basically, there were two choices I had back then: TMT versus FIG, and I intentionally chose FIG because I think that's you know, jewel on the crown, center of the financial system, center of the free markets. I want to be there, and that's basically what happened.
And what was your experience like there? What did you learn, and how did it maybe set you up for maybe being predisposed or interested in cryptocurrency?
In banking, you were just basically thrown into the water before you knew how to swim.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically what happened. I joined in 2008, and that was when a very interesting time. When I remember in 2007, when we were still recruiting for interviewing for internship. There were a lot of bankers on campus talking about LBOs and the fact that this is actually a new world, something is different, and there's only one direction, which is going up, and bankers are being compensated like crazy. But then in 2008, the thing just turned straight down, which was scary. A lot of my friends and colleagues were either let go or moved to different functionalities within the team. Luckily, I was in financial institutions group, so our team was the most and only active team for a year within investment banking because every other sector was dead. There was no capital.
Why exactly with your group? What's the function of it?
Because financial institutions, you help your financial institution customers raise capital, do M&A, do spin-off, and all kinds of stuff. And the reason we were active because all the banks were basically undercapitalized, and you need bankers to help them capitalize, right? And or sell themselves, or do something about it. So we're basically the only active group helping banks to recapitalize, and there are HARP being distributed from the government to some of the bigger banks to rescue them.
Were you for the bailouts, or maybe were you for them at the time and now maybe you aren't, or where do you stand on that?
It was that was an interesting question. No, I was very perplexed by it. I would say that was something that I was when you were in the middle of it, you feel like there was such a big moral hazard of bailing out the ones that are not too big to fail. But at the same time, the other side of you would say, hey, isn't this free markets, right? If something is not working, you better let it fail and then try something new, even if that failure may bring so much pain to the society. By kicking the can down the road, you're only causing a lot more pains. But unfortunately, that was what happened. And there was always a lot of theories about why those are the right things to do. And we continue to hear a lot of that. But I think I didn't realize that there was something fundamentally wrong about it in the monetary system that was causing all this until, again, after I went down the rabbit hole for Bitcoin.
Wow.
I knew that something was not right, but I didn't realize what was not right.
It's so interesting talking to people who do have a background in investment banking or Wall Street, because for so long they existed in the system that really benefits from the fiat monetary policies. But they knew something was off or something was wrong, and that the average person in America maybe was getting strangled by this system, but they didn't put it together until Bitcoin or Austrian economics came into the picture. So around the time that you went there, obviously Satoshi's about to release the white paper. You didn't know about it though, right?
No, I heard about it in 2013
from
a senior banker, actually, who I worked with, a female senior banker who was really smart. And we were in break between meetings, and she just bring it up to me and others sitting around the table and say, hey, actually, have you heard about Bitcoin? It's very at small price. It's very interesting idea. It's crazy idea, but it seems interesting. And none of us was responding. No. And I didn't look into it at all. Like it didn't even, it was,
Why do you think? Did you just think it was like some sort of funny internet money or scam?
No, I think I just didn't pay attention. And being in the investment banking environment, you became so transactional.
Mm-hmm.
You focused on every different things that you work on. And you didn't have time to actually take a step back and pull things together and look at things that's outside your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was why. But you know what? Things happen.
I know. If we could only all go back.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so take me from your transition from Goldman into the cryptocurrency world, and how did you finally decide that, hey, Bitcoin actually is something that I believe in?
Yeah, I was looking at OKcoin as an investment target in late 2016. I knew that it was the biggest crypto platform, trading platform in China, and got to know Star, who was the founder. Got to know a couple of key people on the team, and I looked at their numbers, and they all looked great.
So Goldman wanted to get into the space.
No. That's after I left Goldman.
Okay.
I left Goldman in 2016, later 2016, and then I started to do growth equity investment.
Okay.
Because I was, so intrigued by working with tech companies, payments companies, fintech companies. When I was working in FIG, I feel like they are really bringing technology and innovation to people's life and creating value, not just moving money from one pocket to another.
Yeah.
So that is really inspiring. So I ended up doing growth equity investment, looking at a lot of tech companies in China. And OKcoin was one of my target potential investment companies. And that was when I look at things, and obviously there are internal conversations around whether this is a good investment or not. From the business and cash flow perspective, they're doing great growth, great cash flow, great customer growth as well. But there were also debate about whether this is all speculation, because it did back then. You did see a lot of trading activities and speculation on the price of Bitcoin. So I ended up reading white paper and kind of digging into it. And then I realized, actually that's an very interesting concept of creating a money that is not actually backed by anyone or any government agency, but is instead programmed into codes and is verifiable, and it's not going to be altered by anybody, and unless there's group consensus. That is very fascinating. And the other fascinating piece is that when I always believe in markets, because I think that when you have the right incentive and system set up, as long as you have the right incentive system, people will behave based on the incentives they perceive for themselves. And we are all human beings, and we're driven by our human nature.
Sure.
And an inevitable outcome is that we are all looking for ways to maximize our own value. However we define our value, right? Everybody has a way to define their own value.
Yeah.
But as long as you set up the incentive system in the right way, we will see the right result. And that's what fascinates me the most in Bitcoin. Because the way it is set up, it's all driven by the incentive that was preset.
Yep.
And every stakeholder just act on their own best interest and somehow come up with some amazing system or platform that is out there that is honest and has integrity, which is fascinating. And that's also why when I was looking at the current system, sometimes people are blaming Wall Street. I actually have reservation about that statement, not because I came from Wall Street, but more because if you have a rigged system, you cannot expect people to behave in a totally different way.
Not take advantage of it. Right.
Exactly. When you have the money printing system where you just generate a lot of money from the thin air, people get those money when they get more quote unquote physical money or whatever electronic money, they have nowhere to put into, and they have to survive, or they have to maximize their value, and the only place to go is stock market and real estate market.
Right.
How can you blame people putting their own money into it to generate wealth and preserve wealth? But the result is, for those who doesn't have existing means to do those investments, they were double hurt. And that's where we're seeing the gap widening, and we can only rely on either government taxation to rebalance or a charity of people on an individual basis to rebalance. But the latter is not predictable and sustainable, and the former is not reliable and effective. So, we are stuck. But that's all because the incentive system that was set up in the first place was not right.
That's such a great point. And Bitcoin incentivizes both the users as well as the people that are mining, right? And it's just this mutually beneficial system where greed is good, but it protects the whole network, and it brings out all these virtues and integrity, which is, it's just mind-blowing to me.
Which is amazing. That's why I was initially really blown away by it and was like, wow, it's amazing. And if you replicate that in many other different formats, if technology allows it, then imagine what we can achieve as a collective group on other social activity levels, right? It's just amazing. We don't need government.
Okay. Well, so I want to talk a little bit about your trajectory, investing in OKcoin, knowing the CEO, and then all of a sudden ascending, you became CEO. But before that, I just have a quick question, because I'm curious on a personal level. We're talking right now about a system in which basically it favors the people at the top, and the people towards the bottom or the middle, the savers, they're getting crushed more and more. And we see it, I think, in real time. Our country's getting more and more divided. Why do you personally care to change that? Like, why do you feel invested in making a difference so that the average person can improve their lot in life and maybe save for the future and accumulate wealth?
Yeah. I mean, we are all average people. My parents are all average people too. And when we work hard, we should be entitled to have our value preserved in a way that we can rely on. I remember my parents, when I was little, their monthly salary was probably hundreds of RMB back then, right? And back then, when we were talking about the newly emerging entrepreneurial class in China, when the new open up policy was introduced and markets economy started to prevail, individuals or entrepreneurs who were able to make their first fortune and accumulate more than 10,000 RMB back then was huge. But now, talking about 10,000 RMB in RMB is probably nothing, right? You couldn't even get if you go to a first-class restaurant in Beijing, that's probably one dinner or lunch with a big group of people, right?
Wow.
And the same thing in US.
Yeah.
Think about the price of a house, which is probably in the 10,000s US dollar back then, and how much is of a house now? Yes, there is disparity between different locations, but it's the same thing. So it's just unfair when you have to earn your wealth and preserve your wealth several times.
Yep.
You have to work hard, get money. Those money are for either your own family, children education. When you get old, you take care of yourself, you take care of your parents, you go on vacation with your family, those kind of things. But then you have to think about, oh my God, if I put the money in bank, and 10 years later, I take that money out. If I don't do anything about it, it's like 1/10 of what I can do now. So I actually have to go and find investment opportunities. And none of those investment opportunities are guaranteed.
Right.
And I may I may either get 1% yield, or if I'm lucky, a 2 or 3% yield. When the inflation is targeted at 2%,
Yeah, but it's not really.
It's not really. Like those are calculated inflation. It's just not right. And why should I have to do that? Not to mention being taxed or the other stuff, right? Which we can debate, but it just doesn't feel right.
You wanted to change that.
I mean, we should be able to earn our money and then put it in a place where we know that it is going to be what it, like 10 years later, it's going to be what it is today, or even more.
Yeah.
And then I can actually focus my energy on something more constructive.
Yep, and lower our time preference.
Instead of everyone becoming a Wall Street, right? Because that's why we are having over-financialization, because everyone's goal, apart from working their everyday life, is to figure out how can I keep my money at the value that I was earning it.
So true. It's so true. I love that you said that, because it seems like people are working harder and harder for money that's worth less and less. So they have to risk it in different places. And great if your house went up, 30%, but so did the next guy. So you have to buy a house that's now 30% more expensive.
And what if you don't have, that's why the Gen Z and the younger generation, they don't have anything to start up with.
Impossible.
And when you're facing the increasing asset market, you just have no way. Apart from gambling.
You got the meme coins with your stimulus check.
There's only way for you to get into the play, and you cannot blame them because people have no other choices.
Yeah. Okay, so let's hear about how you became CEO. Tell me about your experience with OKcoin and how you came to this position, and then we'll talk about all the great things the company's doing.
Yeah. So as I told you, I invested in them. I was on the board. I've been on the board ever since to the end of 16, early 17. It was probably one of the most eventful board experience for me because it's a very eventful industry. And you got many big news every year, and a lot of those news are actually life-threatening to a startup, right? When 2017, when we were asked to shut down our business in China, it was pretty much 100% of our business cash flow that you have to shut down overnight and figure out what to do.
And could you just summarize for people that aren't familiar why that happened? It
was in 2017 when the Chinese government basically there was no formal policy or regulation around crypto, but there was a general gesture that if you are holding crypto, if you're holding Bitcoin and crypto assets, it's fine, it's legal because those are assets. But we don't want you to trade. We don't want you to run a business that allow people to trade from crypto into RMB or from RMB into crypto. So as long as you don't touch that fiat leg, it's okay. But we don't want that leg to be around. It's not stipulated as illegal, but it's not permitted. So we ended up changing our business strategy and basically migrated as a whole business to US.
Wow.
So we basically stopped everything, shut down everything very orderly, return assets to the customer.
That must have been hard.
It was hard. We have an amazing team who had long-term vision, who believe in this, believe in the good possibilities down the road, and want to make it work. So we basically came to US in 2017, registered with FinCEN, started to applying for licenses state by state, MSB license state by state. Tim Bigon was leading the efforts. As the CEO back then, I was still sitting on the board. And it took us a while, and then 2018, I think it's mid 2018 or late 2018, we started to accept the first customer in US.
Wow.
So it was basically a platform reborn. It was an immigrant platform, if you will.
First generation.
Yes, first generation. Absolutely. So it was a fun trip. But as you can imagine, as an investor who it's not my money, right? It's my boss money. So I have to be responsible for return on his money. So it was not fun to start with. It was roller coaster experience because you see all these changes, and imagine you put money into a business, and then all of a sudden, the business was wiped out overnight. And you basically start from scratch again. So that was fun. And then obviously the overall industry in crypto went through big cycles. 17 and then 18.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people got disillusioned as well, because basically there was equation between crypto and scam, right? And that I think is detrimental, because when you know that you're working on something that is meaningful and positive, it's okay when you're dealing with all kinds of setbacks. But if you end up feeling that you're working in a scam industry, it doesn't feel good.
No.
So if you end up feeling that you are investing in a scam industry, that was even worse.
Right.
But I think I was actually before everything broke. As an investor, I was also asked by a lot of different projects to invest in those projects. Luckily, I didn't. I did my due diligence, and I didn't really understand what was going on.
Like other currencies?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. White papers.
Sure.
All kinds
ICOs
of white papers.
and,
white papers.
All right.
I didn't do anything apart from investing in OKcoin. OKcoin was basically my only crypto investment back then.
Okay.
Which I now feel very lucky. But throughout the process, it's a process of questioning yourself, questioning your assumption, questioning your decision making. But then realizing again, actually, you know what? I think the initial judgment was still right. It was just a process. It's just too early, and with every new thing, you had a lot of noises. You had a lot of speculators. And that was a natural natural process. So I think that was a process where I basically reestablished the confidence in the long-term future. And when I saw that, I know that I'm ready to make a change in my own career path, because when you have a chance to work in something that is brand new and it's exciting, and it can actually not only change one industry, but many industries and the whole social fabric, it's just hard to say no, right? That's when and during that period, I've been having conversations with Star, who I've established a lot of trust and relationship with. I really trust him. I think he's a man of vision and integrity. And I trust that he's making a lot of good decisions. And he's there for the long term. So when he asked me to help him, join him and be his partner and help him build the business, I ultimately said yes.
Oh,
so
wow.
I came back to US, back to the Bay Area, and started to build the team. That was how.
That must have been an incredible time, moment, everything, both exciting, but also probably a little bit intimidating and scary and nerve-wracking, right? What was your family's reaction?
My family's reaction, they said yes. I guess my husband was very supportive. My two kids, they were too young to know anything about it.
What about your parents?
But they were my parents, Well, I didn't tell them too much.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Why not?
It will scare them back then.
Okay.
But particularly, they grew up in.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's like you couldn't even tell them because they would
I didn't give them
be
a lot
skeptical
of
about it.
I didn't give them a lot of details.
That's fascinating. I laugh because I kind of relate a little bit. Like my mom she was petrified when I started going into Bitcoin. She worked actually in banking in the US when we came here, and she always thought, I'm going to lose all of my money. And I sent her the Bitcoin standard in Polish, translated in Polish.
Nice.
And after she read it, finally, she started to be like, so what's the price of Bitcoin? Oh, like,
That's
good. But
I probably should get a Chinese version
you should
of
get a
that
Chinese
and
version
send to my mom.
Yes. I mean, at this point, you have to think it's something, right?
Yes,
not total.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what was that feeling like, I guess, becoming the first female global exchange CEO? And there's no other women that are leading and at the helm like you are. I mean, what does that feel like, and what is your mission in that role?
I gotta be honest, I didn't really think about that in too much of a gender context.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at Goldman, I work very hard, and the work was very demanding, and there are people around me who were from different backgrounds, and I didn't really put a lot of that gender element into the mix. It's more about what you do and who you work with and why you're here for. So for me, I rarely thought about that question until being asked by media.
Oh.
And the first time I was asked by the media, I was not quite sure how to respond to that question. Because I feel like we all wear different tags, and gender is just one of the tag, and sometimes it's not even necessarily the most important tag. Right?
I agree.
What make all of us different in this room? Yes, gender is probably playing elements here and there, but there are so many different things that come into it and make us us, and it's just but there are differences, I guess. I think what was interesting over the last 2 years is that I feel lucky that I was able to build a team who feel equally passionate about doing this, who are not afraid to tap on my shoulder and say, hey, Hong, we should do this. And then sometimes even tell me, hey, Hong, you should do this.
Yeah.
I'm like, good. That's what I'm here for. I want a team who feel equally passionate and as owner of this process. And they are all experts in what they do. And I'm here to help keep them together. And I think that's really the most fulfilling part of the process. And obviously, there are a lot of learning in as we go, and there are different challenges in different stage of the team, and also the lockdown, the great lockdown period.
Yeah, of course.
But it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. But now I'm happy that we're finally back into a period where we can actually have this conversation in person.
I know.
Which means a lot.
Hong, one of the things that inspires me about the company as well as you is I see so much diversity, and a lot of people are fellow immigrants. I know someone's from Pakistan, you're from China, someone's from Belarus. I think that's super exciting.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the culture of OKcoin and your commitment to bringing more women in the space, because I know there was a recent announcement, you're pledging $1 million to bring more women into crypto.
Yeah.
So talk to me about that with OKcoin.
Yeah, I am super proud of the team we're building, and a big kudos to recruiting team who are bringing a lot of talented people of different backgrounds. And you're right, we have a team of people from so many different backgrounds, immigrants and non-immigrants, natives who grow up in the U.S., very, very diversified, which is great. And we speak many different languages, different time zones. It's sometimes a very challenging task to schedule calls for a large team. But I think what we are feeling strong about as a team, and also when I'm looking at the team and thinking about who we want to hire and continue to build this culture that we already have and we want to continue to enhance, there are a couple of things, right? One is it's really, we talk about it's okay to be different, but it really is okay to be different. We have people on the team who is a Bitcoin maximalist. We have people on the team who are Ethereum maximalist, right? And then we have people who are straddling in between and actually trying different things. We have folks that know very well what Latin America culture is, and so well that they would tell me, hey, don't talk about Latin America as if it's one piece. There are actually many different countries and many different subcultures. And then there are team members who came from Africa, who came from Russia, many different places, and they have their own story that they bring to the table. That's one thing I think, being open to, and there are a lot of times when we actually talk about make decisions. For example, give you an example, when we delist BCH and BSV,
yes,
there was a lot of internal discussions and many different perspectives. People were feeling strong about it and pounding the table to say why we should do this, why we should not do this.
Wow.
All for good reason, not all for like principles they stand for. But then ultimately, I had to pull the trigger and say, okay, I'm going to be the dictator this time and have to make certain decisions. But the good thing that we are championing is it's okay to be different. It's okay to voice your perspective and be different, but at the same time, respect that level of difference. Hear it out. And once a consensus once a decision is made, then you go ahead and execute it, regardless of your own personal decision or perspective. I think that is important. And then the second piece that is important, really important, is we want people who are open to changes. Not only changes around them, but also changes in them, because it's the industry is so fascinating and so volatile. That you have to be able to evolve yourself, even if that is really painful sometimes. And none of us were born to know everything or to be perfect. We all have defects because we are human. We all have blind spots. And particularly when we are now working remotely, that actually amplify a lot of those blind spots in communication. So the only way to cross that hurdle and be strong together and build that bonding relationship, that trusting relationship, is to be open to different perspectives and feedbacks, particularly constructive feedback, and be able to feed on it positively, right? Instead of being defensive, and embrace that pain. And that is easier said than done. It's very hard to change yourself, either individually or organizationally. But I think that is a key DNA in our organization. If you think about what we have been through since 2017, if we cannot change, if we cannot positively embrace those changes as a organization, we would have died so many times, like so many times. So I think it's important to have that thing in you on our team. And I think the last thing that is important is to feel like you're feeling it. You want to do this. You have passion for this. It's not just a salary clip that you're getting. Because if that's the case, then you probably want to find a job elsewhere. Because this is hard. You know it, right? It's hard. It's 24/7. There's so many complications. Both from within and without. And then there are all these regulatory changes that sometimes you feel like, okay, am I working in the criminal industry? We're not. We are actually trying to make positive impact. But then there are always bad factors. And then there are, sometimes unfortunate situations. But I think you need to be able to actually enjoy it, to not feeling that you're sacrificing something for this. And I think that is important. The level of passion is really important. And I'm very lucky that I have a group of people who love doing this.
Yes.
You can tell.
Yes,
you can
totally.
tell.
They're very passionate. Do you want to touch on the women in crypto and the $1 million?
Yeah, sure. We have a group of very talented team, as you have met a lot of them.
Yeah.
A lot of them are female. There are also very strong, talented male colleagues on our team as well. But we feel, again, that is a topic that is very, I feel very mixed feelings about that topic and that commitment, because on the one hand, I do not like talking about gender, because I feel like talking about gender is belittling any of us. Mm-hmm. We have so many female voices and leadership in the industry already. It's not like we are not here. We are, including you and Randy. We talked about last night, and Stacy, who is a big role model, classic in the industry. Elizabeth from Lightning Lab, right? So many, Kathy Wood, so many female, Lynn Arden. The list can go on.
So true.
So it doesn't feel like it's the right thing to focus too much on gender. So that's
like
one.
To categorize into group.
And when we talk about being inclusive, again, everyone is different. Mm-hmm. And why should we actually rudely put people into just two categories because of how long their hair is? Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, there is a existing and undeniable gap in numbers of participants. Even if, maybe if you count those voices who are not being heard, or silent people who are actually in there, there's still a pretty big difference. And I think the natural hurdle for more women to be part of it is just that first step. Mm-hmm. The first step of being able to look at something different, to try something different, and to be something different, and to learn about this, right? Starting with Bitcoin. And that's always what I believe in, that Bitcoin is a universal truth at this point. It is a no-brainer, like if once you cross the chasm, right? That first step is really important. So I think it's up to us, everyone in the industry, to help. It's not about dictating. Yes, we talk about having at least 50% of our customer by 2025 to be female, but it's not like drawing a line and say, okay, we monitor this percentage.
No, I get
and if
it.
we're at 48 and 52, and you are a female and you are a male, no, you didn't pass that process.
I get
it. But it's more about bringing the awareness and giving people more access.
Sure.
And giving people more nudge to cross that line. And we feel pretty passionate about it because we see what great ladies can do in this industry when they actually get it.
Yeah, and when they're empowered. And I remember
and going back to the stereotypes, female have gender stereotype, have great stamina.
Yeah.
Right? Once they get it, they just keep doing it.
I know. I completely agree with you. I get it. And I remember our conversation from before where you can tell there's a gender gap. It's blaringly obvious, especially if you go to an event, because the bathroom line for the girls is like two people. And for the guys, it's like around the block.
It was surreal.
So you can't see there's no gender gap. Okay, so as we start to wrap up here, I just wanted to touch on something you sort of mentioned, that you want Bitcoin to be sort of the entry point. You see it as sort of this universal truth. You have a lot of different coins on OKcoin. I know you delisted Bitcoin Cash, but for the people out there that are sort of wondering, or maybe they're the maxis out there that do believe that a lot of the other currencies are either just tech companies or speculative projects or even securities, maybe gambles that people could lose a lot of money on. What's your response and your take?
I truly believe that there are a lot of people in the industry who are entrepreneurial builders who believe in something big and something different. they may have different approaches. They may fail. Many of them may fail, but that's okay. And that's number one. Number two, if Bitcoin can succeed at the monetary level of achieving a decentralized and censorship-resistant network of money, I cannot see why some other anonymous developer or developers or named developer or developers cannot succeed at the same level on other aspects, right? And and that include a lot of the layer one attempts and projects, various projects that people are trying. And number three, I think when I saw Bitcoin and was excited about Bitcoin in the first place back in 2016, what I saw was not just a new money. What I saw was a foundation for something that is very different. And for that to be a foundation of a new future, you got to be able to build on top of that foundation. You cannot have an old house and then have a new foundation right next to it and then just connect a wire from that foundation to the old house and say, okay, work accomplished. It has to be a new house next to it. There got to be different bricks and blocks building on top of it. And again, there are different approaches to how you build that house, and many different participants have to come in that ecosystem and contribute. And there are people building within Bitcoin, talking about Lightning and Taproot that we are extremely excited about. Yeah. There are people who are building on top of Bitcoin. Again, Stacks community and the recent Miami coin that we are supporting, we are all feeling very excited about. And then there are people building next to Bitcoin, right? All these different layers. And you may have different views about what they're doing, different perspectives. And again, some projects probably have intentions that are not exactly what they should be, but it's not like different people have different judgment. And ultimately, market will tell. So for us, we think that we will make our assessment. We try to do our assessment work about what projects we feel like are legitimate, being built by legitimate people or community. But ultimately, it's the market who will tell, right? Projects can fool community 1 year, 2 year, but if nothing comes out of it, the market will be able to tell. It's like early VC work.
Sure.
It's just more now. The difference is early VC work in crypto is actually having a liquid market that reflects the price of it, and everyone can access it. Everyone becomes a VC investor.
Yeah.
In a weird way. So I think it's really up to every individual to make that decision call for them and think about, can I just buy public's blue chip like Bitcoin, or do I want to add a little bit of a growth equity into it, or do I actually also allocate some into VC type of investment, which is liquid but extremely risky.
Right.
1 out of 1,000 succeed, but if that one succeed, you pretty much, or not 1,000, 1 out of maybe 200.
Sure.
You get more than what you invested in back. But if bad VC investors don't get anything back.
Yeah.
It's the same logic, right? It's the same story.
Well, last 2 questions. I just want to sort of get your take on, what do you want people to know about Bitcoin? For the people that are maybe watching this and they're new, or they haven't invested before, maybe they're looking at OKcoin as a place to perhaps buy their first portion of a Bitcoin. Why do you believe in Bitcoin, and where do you see it going?
Yeah, I think Bitcoin is the first real global money of integrity, meaning that when I put money into it, put my hard-earned value into it, I don't have to worry about what the value would be 10 years later. I think it's well preserved. It's good saving money. That's I think the most important thing that I would want to share with people out there, right? And if you actually want to take a step back and look at what actually it is, you can do all the work. But the high level definition of what Bitcoin is right now is it has this saving power in it, that blue chip, because the way it is designed, because of how far it has come so far. It has come to a point where there's no return. It's not going to be killed at this point unless from within, unless something technological breakdown happens within the system. That's why we feel so passionate about sponsoring the developers who are continue to build and solidify the foundation.
So true.
But that's one aspect of it. The good thing that you can get at this point about Bitcoin is you not only get that blue chip sense of safety, you actually also get a quote-unquote traditional VC level upside without that VC risk. It's investing in a technology. It's investing in a global network that it's in its early stage. It's already past that survival life-death point. It will continue to grow, but it's still too early that many other people are not realizing its value. So you're going to get both the level of sense of safety as well as huge upside.
Yeah.
But the most difficult part is to actually see it that way and develop that conviction so that you can actually hold on to it long enough.
That's right. Well, I've loved talking to you. My last question is just on a more personal note. I like to ask this of most of my guests at the very end. If you look back on your career and if you could just teleport yourself to when you were young, maybe the young girl growing up in China before she came here, what would you tell your younger self?
That's a great question. I think there are many things you haven't done before. Don't let that stop you from trying it, because you never know. Yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you for having me.